You drop a green $25 chip into the toke box bolted to your blackjack table. It disappears through a slot, with a sound like a coin machine swallowing change. You will never personally count that chip. You won't even be in the room when it's counted. That money is yours, technically, starting the second it hits the felt. You just have no way of proving it. Here's what a season on the floor teaches you that the recruiting poster never mentions. You're not really being paid to deal cards. You're being paid according to a pooling formula you don't control, run by people you don't get to watch, on money that was legally yours before it ever reached them. Think of it like this. Your income doesn't belong to you the moment you earn it. It belongs to a locked box first, and only becomes yours again after it passes through someone else's math. Quick question for you. Have you ever tipped a dealer or dealt cards yourself? What table games have you played the most? Tell me in the comments. Back to the table. Here's the base structure. In most states, casinos are legally allowed to pay tip dealers below the standard minimum wage, using what's called a tip credit, as long as tips make up the difference under Section 203M of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Nevada is one of a small number of states that doesn't allow that credit at all. Dealers there must be paid full state minimum wage regardless of tips. But in states that do allow it, your base pay can sit well below minimum wage on paper, with the expectation that tokes cover the rest. Those tokes rarely stay at your table. Most casinos pool them. Every dealer's tips for a shift get combined, then split using a formula the house designs and controls. You might deal the busiest, most generous table on the floor all night and still walk out with the same toke split as the dealer working the dead table nobody sat down at. The counting itself happens somewhere you never see. Tips get gathered from every toke box on the floor and run through what the industry calls a soft count, typically handled by a separate department, on camera, away from the gaming floor entirely. Told the total. You're not shown the counting. For an industry built almost entirely on verified, audited numbers everywhere else. Every chip, every card, every shuffle logged and reviewed, the one number that determines your actual paycheck is the one you have to take purely on faith. This exact system has ended up in court, repeatedly, at some of the biggest names in the industry. In 2000, Steve Wynn had language removed from the employee handbook that required dealer approval before any change to the tip policy, then dismantled the dealer's own toke committee, the group that had historically overseen and counted the pool themselves. Dealers could no longer watch their own tips being counted. The fight over that change ran for years and finally ended in April 2021 with a $5.6 million settlement covering an estimated 1,000 current and former Wynn table games dealers, about $4,170 per dealer. One of those dealers, Kenny Castrol, said publicly she personally lost around $150,000 in tokes over the course of the dispute. The original case was brought by two dealers, Joseph Cesars and Kui Ngok Tang, who each received $10,000 as named plaintiffs on top of the standard payout, while attorneys collected $1.4 million in fees from the settlement. Let's actually run tonight's pool the way the count room will after your shift ends. 12 dealers worked the floor tonight. Combined, the toke boxes brought in $3,600. Split evenly across all 12 dealers, that's $300 each, no matter which table you personally worked. You had a great night. A high roller alone tipped you close to $200 in green chips. Under the pool, that generosity gets redistributed to 11 other dealers, including 2 who worked tables that barely saw a hand all night. Compare that to what you would have kept under a straight, unpooled system. If you'd been allowed to keep your own table's tips tonight, industry patterns suggest a dealer working a busy, high-limit table over an 8-hour shift can realistically pull in $400 to $600 in tokes alone on a strong night. Under the pool, that same strong night gets capped at whatever the 12-way split allows. Potentially less than what you'd have earned solo, even though the pooling exists specifically so a bad night doesn't wipe you out either. And here's the part that isn't just a villain story. Pooling genuinely protects dealers too. Table assignments rotate constantly, and nobody controls whether they get put on the packed high-limit table or the empty $3 minimum table in the corner. Without pooling, your entire paycheck would depend on luck of the rotation. With it, a slow night at a dead table doesn't wipe out your income the way it would for a server working a single dead section of a restaurant. But later that same shift, you overhear 2 dealers talking about a lawsuit filed against a casino in a different state entirely. In May 2026, a table games dealer named Lydia Colon sued Atlantic City's Ocean Casino Resort, alleging its tip pooling system shifted labor costs onto dealers and improperly used mandatory pooled tips to cover costs the casino itself should have absorbed, with total damages alleged to exceed $5 million. Around the same time, a former dealer named Ryan Hyde filed a similar class action against Monarch Casino Resort Spa in Black Hawk, Colorado, alleging dealers were required to share tips with supervisors who occasionally worked the floor, even though supervisors, by law, aren't supposed to be eligible for a dealer's tip pool at all. Cullen's complaint against Ocean Resort raised something even more specific. Dealers there commonly work in what the industry calls a string, a rotation of table time built around non-tip downtime like breaks and side duties. And her lawsuit alleges the casino's tip credit calculations didn't properly separate that non-tip time from time spent actually dealing to paying customers. If true, that means some of the hours a dealer spends technically on the clock, but not actually earning tips, were still being counted toward the casino's justification for paying below full minimum wage. You think about every supervisor who's ever stepped in to deal a few hands on a busy night and wonder how many pools quietly included them without anyone checking. This isn't isolated to two casinos either. Federal courts in Kansas and Missouri have separately certified class actions against Boyd Gaming over its Kansas Star Casino tip pool and against Pinnacle Entertainment, covering dealers across nearly 10 different properties nationwide, including Ameristar Council Bluffs, Cactus Pete's, Boomtown New Orleans, and L'Auberge Baton Rouge. Every one of these cases challenges the same basic structure: a pooling system the casino designs, controls, and counts, with the dealer left trusting the math after the fact. Taken together, these cases stretch from Nevada to New Jersey to Colorado to the Midwest, which tells you this isn't one bad casino. It's how a meaningful chunk of the entire industry has chosen to structure dealer pay. You cash out at the end of your shift and take your $300 from the pool. You didn't get tipped tonight. You got assigned a number, generated by a formula, built from tips that were never really yours to keep in the first place. If this changed how you think about the next dealer you tip, hit like and subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. See you in the next one.